Media Day is here. We heard from the Pacers how they're going to play. Tyrese Haliburton talked about his life in injury land. Jay Huff is on the Pacers and discussed that reality and so much more. Derek Kramer and I get to it all today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Happy Tuesday, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes, and today, the season is here. Media Day is back. The Pacers are talking. Rick Carlisle is answering questions about how this team is going to play. All the players in new or significantly different roles are describing it. Pascal Siakam is leading it all. And Tyrese Haliburton spoke about his team, his injury, Jay Huff. So much happened at Pacers Media Day, which is interesting because for the second straight year, it's a very similar team to the year before. And there's not a ton to reveal. And yet we still got tons of little insights and crumbs here and there that are so significant to what this team's short-term future is, and even long-term, and even some players who didn't talk got a lot of shine today. Derek Kramer from iPacersblog joins today. We're going to break it all down. Let's just get right into the heart of Pacers Media Day 2025. Pacers Media Day 2025 is come. It has gone. We have learned things about the Pacers. We have met Jay Huff. Obi Toppin's head is cut off or something. The standard is the standard. Isaiah Jackson is bigger. Everybody likes Johnny Furphy now. Woof. What a day in Pacerland. The same cast of characters for the third year in a row, save for a few different guys here or there. And yet a much different day after last season's run with new expectations. The most common questions surely being about the team style. And we learned a good amount about it all today as people talked on the record for the first time in over 3 months. Derek Kramer was there. He's iPacersblog. He's back after I made him come on to talk about Miles Turner a few weeks ago, who also did some stuff that fans, of course, loved once again. Derek, hello. How are you? Did you enjoy Media Day today?
Always a good time at Media Day. I wish it was still in the practice gym where we can kind of see them interact more with each other. It's always a little bit more fun when you get some of that stuff. But, yeah, good day today. Just hanging out in the media room and getting to reacquaint ourselves with all of these players.
Did I miss any of the best quotes?
I mean, the standard is the standard, Tony. I don't know how
we'll talk about that.
That's how dare you miss your standards of having the most common thing that was said all day. The standard is the standard. The Pacers are the Pacers.
That quote that Derek is referring to will be brought up today because it was very often used in reference to the concept of them playing how they've played before. It was very interesting because it was always said right after they're like, yeah, we'll probably have to play a little differently. I'm like, wait, these are different things. I think the funniest quote of the day was when I mentioned earlier, Obi Toppin slightly butchering the chicken with his head cut off line and saying, quote, I'm not running around with my own head cut off like a chicken when talking about the game slowing down for him. That was among my favorites. He also called TJ McConnell, quote, the oldest player in the NBA, oldest guy in the league, unquote. So some good stuff today, but I thought the most important thing that I wanted to ask Rick and then kind of bleed into other players is what I just mentioned. How are you going to play, right? We've heard breadcrumbs of this from players all offseason, like Obi mentioning, like, yeah, we have this identity. We want to stick to this. And I get that the way that they play now is how they want to play when Tyrese Haliburton does return in 2 years. And we also have to talk about the fact that Haliburton did talk today. That's obviously very noteworthy. His first time talking about the Pacers specifically outside of his camp since the injury. But as I keep babbling, what was your kind of big takeaways from the Pacers' idea of how they're going to play this year and how different that's going to look from a Tyrese Haliburton-led Pacers team?
Yeah, I don't know how much I can take away from today. I think it's like, I think the whole standard is the standard thing is obviously like they clearly wanted to talk about that and make sure it's clear that like where like this isn't going to be a gap year. I think it's more about that than just we're going to play as fast as Tyrese played all the time and nothing at all is going to change when we're on the court. I think it's just like still holding themselves to that play hard, full court defense, all of those type of things as much as anything when they're talking about the standard. I think the thing that I found most interesting about how they'll play without Tyrese is I feel like you can tell that Carlisle isn't completely sold that the projected starting lineup is going to work, because you can tell like he knows that that's going to be a challenge for Ben, potentially having to guard on the ball more often than he ever really has or has needed to before. He knows that there's not going to be as many playmakers on the court as they have in the past. So I think he sees some potential flaws in that lineup, and I think that'll be kind of the interesting thing to play out during the preseason and the early start to the regular season to see if they can overcome those projected deficiencies or if it's something that they're going to need to switch up and change.
Yeah, that got dropped. And then TJ McConnell, I don't know if he was just like thinking about last year or just slipped it in, but he was like, he mentioned Drew playing the 1 and the 2. And it's like, if Andrew Nembhard's playing any 2, don't get me wrong, he's played Andrew Nembhard with other point guards before, but without Haliburton, the team dynamics, like, wait. That's like a real shift in either someone else playing less or someone playing a different position. Like, is Daylon Wright playing? Is someone else playing the 3 who we thought was playing the 2? Is someone not playing at all who we thought was playing the 2? There's lots of shifts like that. We did get a hint that Isaiah Jackson is working with the ones as the starting center, but we don't know that yet, like non-committal on that. And like, I understand that being a camp competition. So yeah, that was noteworthy to me as well. And I think that, early in the offseason, the thought was it will be a competition who starts at the 2 and the 5. Like we heard that from Chad Buchanan, I think on the radio. I can't remember where that was. And Rick as well. And then later, as the offseason progressed, it was announced to be Mathurin. So that is certainly something to track. I thought that, so most players said, I think this is a Mike Tomlin quote, the coach of the Steelers, the thing about the standard being the standard, which I, like in my head, interpreted as they had a way that they played and their identity they had, and they've set that standard of how they play in the past, and that's like how they'll start. But I think they all kind of know that they might have to slightly tweak things to be the best version of this team. And I thought the best answer to that question was Aaron Nesmith when he said, yeah, it'll be a different pace. He said, we're going to play at Andrew's pace, not Tyrese's pace, right? And so even if you are playing Pacers basketball, which I think to them less so than the pace was more about like the things you said, pressure, full court press, physicality, and not as much pace as you can get with the players you have, it will just be that their point guard's tempo is different, and that alone forces you to play a different way, right? So to the extent that that is a huge storyline this year, and again next year when Tyrese Haliburton comes back, the more we've heard, the more I expect them to try to have a lot of ball movement, to try to play the way they have, to flow around, to be random, but it will still look a little slower and not have quite the same volume of passes as it will be at, as they say, Andrew's pace.
Yeah, and it's kind of the natural Tyrese of it all. Like, we're probably not going to see those immediate hit-ahead passes at nearly the rate that Tyrese does, because Tyrese does that more than anyone in the league. You just can't expect them to fully replicate what Tyrese does in that way. And I think that's probably the biggest way that they'll lose some pace, is just from losing those simple hit-ahead where he just is always looking to see if somebody's up ahead to push the ball ahead and let them make the play that they need to. And that's the fascinating thing to see this year, is just how they adapt without Tyrese, who kind of steps up, who like seems like they feel a little out of place without Tyrese on the court as much. And it's a fascinating season to see how it goes.
The way McConnell said it was create advantages offensively. Pascal Siakam said they just got to continue to be us. It just, to me, will be who can get in the paint, who can keep the defense moving. How does this look the same? And if they get 10 games in, they're like, oh, crap, we can't. Because last year they didn't have Tyrese playing like Tyrese to start the season, and they had to find a way, and they were 10 and 15. How does that, maybe 25 games is too long, but like, how does that materialize in the first 20 games? I think we have a picture of how they want it to look. We'll see how it actually looks when the games come. And, oh, look, the start of their season is like the hardest stretch of their schedule. That's always good and exciting. Everybody, quick break so we can talk about FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has offers that you do not want to miss right now. If you're a new customer on FanDuel, you can bet just $5. You'll get 300 bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet. Put down $5. If it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets that you can use across the app. Many people love FanDuel for so many different reasons, but a lot of it is, the heart of it is, there's so many ways to play. You can build parlays. You can try your hand at player props. You can even follow live lines during games. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action, whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats. FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Again, FanDuel.com. Speaking of Tyrese, Tyrese Haliburton spoke. Did he say anything super extremely noteworthy to you about the recovery process, where he's at, things of like?
I thought the most interesting thing that he talked about was when Chris Teneri asked him at the end of his press conference, like how much he's thought about the run that the team had, and Tyrese like really went into depth. I think he gave like over 2-minute answer, including like something that I think we've probably both heard from a lot of fans through the summer is that like he can't go back and watch any of those games yet. Like he's just not ready to. It's too hard for him to do it right now because of how it ended. And I like that was just like really interesting to hear from the star of the team. That was kind of the biggest thing to me. I thought it was also interesting how that he plans on traveling with the team as much as possible. I don't think that's a like standard thing for a guy that's going to be out all year. I don't feel like we usually see them on road trips very often. So I'm interested in, especially like he was like, yeah, I'm going to the preseason games. Like that felt crazy to me that he's bothering to do that kind of stuff. Those were kind of the most interesting things to me, and how he wants to just feel like he's involved and not kind of, I don't know, let himself not feel like he's part of the team. His mom joked that them getting the disabled player exception meant that he was no longer part of the team. So yeah, those were the most interesting things for me from Tyrese.
The travel part was interesting to me because I asked him this. Like, one thing I wonder about Tyrese Haliburton this year is like, look, obviously it's a whatever you want to say, lost season gap in his life of basketball, whatever. But like, it's not nothing. Like, what is he actually getting out of this? Or in the case of him traveling, vice versa. What can he do behind the scenes to actually provide a modicum of value to the basketball team that he's on? And if that's being this great connector that obviously we see what it looks like on the basketball court, but like behind the scenes and in the locker room and from a coaching Drew or whoever perspective, like that's good. Traveling would be good for the team. If it's learning, as he said, from a coaching perspective, I've heard that a lot this season between him and Caitlin Clark sitting on the sideline. That's also a big deal. So yes, I also agree that the traveling part was a big deal. I put TBD on travel plans because I think he said he'd go if it was like basically not just a one-off game, which is why I'm like, the preseason is that. But good for him. So in some ways, that is like, I guess that's what I expected him to say, but I'm still glad he outlined like what value he gets and gives this season, because he's not playing. He's not playing at all. And I wonder what that looks like for him after his summer sucked, right? It was a huge drag. He can't play. It's sad because he can't watch the games. It's a bummer because he's recovering. Like, his life just changes in an instant. The thing he said that I thought, I was like, okay, I'm going to probably use that a lot this season is, well, actually two things. One is he called the style, or when he was talking about the play style and he was talking about some changes for players, he called it baptism by fire. Right. And so it's not like anyone on the Pacers is playing a role that's like so unfamiliar to them that it's sink or swim. But it is going to be for a lot of players who are doing that, like a significant change for their future with the Pacers, not in a way that like they're on or off the team, but just like, okay, they will now know with certainty how much Andrew Nembhard at the one they can go to in future seasons. They will now know with certainty the right spots for Mathurin and how much he can lead or how effective they can be in a full season of a slowed down kind of system with him. And so many other players, Jarris, Shepard, who are going to be playing bigger or different roles this season. And I think that term will be apt, especially as there's injuries and players are playing even more or even different roles than we have talked about all offseason. That'll be significant. And the other significant thing was when he was talking about leadership roles. And he said, Andrew Nembhard, got it. Yep. TJ McConnell, got it. Point guard, yep. And Obi Toppin. What? That was a surpriser. Obi did not even see that one coming. But I thought those two things were also noteworthy.
Yeah, Obi's reaction to being called a potential leader was also funny. He was definitely the most just kind of upbeat, kind of loose during the
J-Huff challenge flag.
Yeah, well, I'm going to give it to Obi just because Obi's a little bit sillier. But yeah, I think the kind of Tyrese's excitement for this season and what he wants to see is kind of like mine. I want to see what these guys look like with these different roles. And I think he believes in that baptism by fire philosophy, if you want to call it that, because that's kind of how he feels like he got used to being the guy with the Pacers. And he talked about that many times with all of the shots that he hit in the playoffs last year. He thinks he is able to hit those shots because Carlisle and the Pacers organization just let him kind of fail for some of those moments when he first got here in Indiana and was able to just try things and figure it out and kind of do the baptism by fire approach. So I think he sees the value in that. And yeah, like a lot of guys are going to get the chance to do things that they wouldn't otherwise if Tyrese was here. And that's kind of the benefit, if there is one, of a season like this.
As for his own recovery, on schedule, coming along. I don't know if I expected any other answer.
It's going terrible. Right. Thing to say on media day.
Yeah. I should have said that at the beginning. Take anything said on media day with whatever level of serious you deem appropriate, and I can't really dispute that it's wrong. Like, no one's lying necessarily, but it's media day. But yeah, his timeline is so long because it's going to be like 18 months that even slight hiccups or like he has the ability to travel freely and not worry about it slowing any recovery because he doesn't have to play for quite a long time from the start of the injury to his actual return to the floor. Other player who spoke that we hadn't heard from in a while in a Pacers uniform, and by a while I mean all of eternity, Jay Huff. Jay Huff's funny. Jay Huff described getting traded to the Pacers while pulling a prank on his family and trying to hide and pretend he was already at dinner. So he was hiding in a pantry with his wife. Oh, just kidding. Quick phone call. You're on your way to the Indiana Pacers. And his whole family knew from Shams. Good stuff from Jay Huff. Good attitude. He was very funny. I think he recognizes a couple things that are important. One is that this is a bigger opportunity in terms of what's asked of him. And that he'll have to fit into the competition that they have because it's a different culture. It's a different style. It's a different thing. And he wasn't like asked a ton about how new and challenging all that newness will be because he's been moved so much and almost was in the NBA last year. But I think from like a let's say personality perspective on a team that has, like, as Miles Turner called it, power friendship ass team, I got the fit for that part pretty quickly just by being around him for 5 minutes.
Yeah, he seems like he's not going to have any trouble fitting in with the group from an off the court perspective. Yeah, I enjoyed his story about getting traded there. I thought it was like he's got kind of, I don't know, a good perspective on things where he knows his skill set as a center is different than the other two. And he thinks that like the centers, all three centers kind of having those different skill sets is a good thing. And though I don't think he expects to be like the starter every night, I think he kind of sees that like this is going to be a by committee approach, which Carlisle has said in the past. And like whoever has the best matchup for that night is going to be the guy, or at least start as the guy for that game. So like having that perspective and knowing he kind of already understands probably what his role is going to be in Indiana, and coming from a guy that like talked about like he was real close to just going to Europe and playing, I think in a team in Italy before the Memphis deal came along last year. So like I think he's kind of probably grateful to have this kind of opportunity and role in the NBA. And yeah, he seems like a fun guy.
His first year entering the season with a guaranteed standard contract, not a 2A, not an Exhibit 10, not a nothing. Like that's a big deal for your own, feeling in complacency, and how he seizes that opportunity will be critical. Sounds again like he's working with the twos right now, but we will see where that goes. He also had nice things to say about James Wiseman, who was a popular pick for the who is standing out to you question. I would say he came up second or third most in that. He said James Wiseman routinely was a challenging one for him to go against. So James Wiseman, good day for him, despite not being among the people who spoke. I have one more thing to get to before I kind of let you rattle off things that stood out to you. One more break here, guys, so we can talk about Monarch Money. Most people cannot name all of their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments, and you when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface right on your laptop or your phone. It's built for people with busy lives. If you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. They do the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. You can identify areas where you're not saving as much as you thought by noticing inefficient investments or forgotten 401ks from past jobs, so you can maximize investments, increase your savings rate, and easily review finances with a partner or a financial advisor so you can have a clear view of your financial health week to week or long term. Do not let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with the code LOCKEDONNBA. Pascal was a theme, and I thought that Pascal, in some ways, not did it to himself, but like made himself a theme in a meaningfully good way. One, with his lighter attitude coming in, but the way he kind of described, like he doesn't view himself as the number one option and still views how they win as an ecosystem team thing like they did last year. But also at the same time, it's kind of hard to explain this unless you were in the room or you watched it, but recognizing that like his own leadership, his own adapting to the situation and being more important on offense is still kind of extremely relevant to the season. Like he is such a central figure for kind of every aspect of what the season will be about. If they win more than people expect, he will be awesome, right? If he takes the mantle of this team and keeps them afloat on offense, it'll become he's good. If they have a really great behind the scenes locker room culture that loses their great connector on the floor and James Johnson, it'll be because Pascal Siakam's voice stepped up even more. Like if they're able to kind of keep their identity alive and still be really potent on offense, it's because of him. So I think after he talked, I ended up being like, I need to ask more guys about Pascal because he is going to be more of an important connector than I even thought about and realized. When he said we've got to continue to be us, I think the reason they can do that is because of him, like him starting their season off in Orlando with the same minicamp vibes as last year. So I'm going to write about that after Derek and I hang up, because I thought that became an important theme that like we've all talked about his importance rising and his pecking order in the offense going up. But the way he talked about it was framed a little differently, and the way that it kind of bleeds into what the team hopes to be, I thought was very noteworthy.
Yeah, I really just the fact that Pascal kind of, I think it shows how much he loves kind of the culture and the system that the Pacers have created, that he's just like, it's like, it's not about me, even without Tyrese. Like, I'm not looking at myself as the number one option. Like, it's still about being us and playing as a team. And I think it just kind of shows like they really found the perfect kind of second star, first star at times for this organization and this team and this system. And yeah, like he's talked about how he'll probably have to do more of like bringing the ball up with being the secondary ball handler now and doing different things. Yeah, like he's definitely going to be a linchpin for kind of how the team is able to survive this season. One thing that I didn't think about until after he was done is I thought about the Raptors season after they lost Kawhi. Obviously not an injury, but they lost him to free agency. But the Raptors were still really good that season, and they played pretty well. Was that the year of the bubble? Like they weren't good in the bubble at all, if that was that year.
No, they had the Tampa year and they were terrible. And then the year after that, they were pretty good. And he started the year like awesome that year.
Yeah. But before the Tampa year, that was like the bubble was
bubble
after.
Year, Tampa year, normal year.
The bubble year before the bubble, they were like still like that was the first year without Kawhi, and they were still really good until. Yeah, so I wonder how much
they pushed the Celtics in the playoffs, and like OG hit that big three in the playoffs.
Yeah, Pascal really struggled in the playoffs, but he like couldn't work out or all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I wonder how much he looks back at that season as a way that if he can apply it to this one as a similar thing. But I didn't think about that until after we were done. But that's just like he's had a similar experience, and I wonder kind of if he views this in a similar way.
That's a good question. I have a couple other players I could go on, but I'm going to stop talking and say, Derek, what stood out to you today?
There wasn't a whole, like we've talked about most of the things that stood out to me. Jairus, I thought like you asked a great question to open that he clearly related to, where like a rookie, you don't feel like you know what you're doing. And then the second year, you think you know, but you don't actually know until the third year or something like that. And Jarris was like, yeah, I can definitely see that. Hopefully third time's the charm. And I think that just that little kind of throwaway line, I feel like speaks to maybe the little, like he wants more, I'm sure. Like I don't think he's satisfied with the first 2 years and being like a little bit inconsistent of a role. Carlisle seemed a little dismissive of he played 15 minutes a game last year, but there were obvious times where he was not in the rotation for stretches. And yes, he played often, but there was like always an injury. And it was never like he solidified himself like permanently into the rotation. So I think it'll be interesting to see with Jarris this year. And I think it's a similar thing to Ben. Like both of those lottery picks probably aren't satisfied or haven't been thrilled with the consistency of their roles over their start to their careers. And I think Ben, you could kind of hear some of that stuff under some of his answers too. So like those two things are always something that I'm kind of watching for and thinking about. Ben especially reminds me of the Kuminga situation with Golden State. So I'm curious to see how Ben goes this year and if that kind of turns sour like Kuminga's has with the Warriors this summer. Those were a couple of the other things for me.
I need my doctor because I'm about to relapse. I haven't gotten Kuminga news in 12 hours, which is way too long in this news cycle. Need a direct injection into my veins.
You're welcome for bringing him up.
Saying his name. Yeah, phew, finally. So with Jarris, I asked that question because I remember two players specifically detailing basically exactly what I asked. And they ended up having very different impacts in their careers. Jarris is already better than one of these two guys. One I told him was Tyrese Haliburton, who was like, he came into his second season and like, I think we can all understand the human nature of how this happens. You go through your rookie year and you have no idea what to expect in the NBA. And then your first season happens and you're like, okay, I know what the NBA is about. I'm ready for year two. Let's do this. And you just kind of like walk in and you think you know what's going to happen. You're like, oh, things are different. Crap. Like I didn't work on the right things. Like I just kind of generically got better. And then you go into year three after getting your butt kicked twice and you're like, you know what you need to get better at. You know what the NBA is about. You know what the proper offseason is. And then you're like, okay, I get it. You know, after you think you get it, you don't really get it. And then you really get it. So Tyrese said that happened to him. Chris Duarte also said that happened to him. And then he got traded to the Kings and didn't get that third season with the Pacers. Those are the two guys I recall explaining that process. And I think that's normal human nature to be like, yep, awesome. I'm not a rookie anymore. I totally get it. And you walk in and you're like, oh, no, okay, never mind. And so for Jarris, I think that's good, right? And I think he answered that question like, I got lucky, right? But he was basically like, that's exactly how I feel going into this year. And so he's been doing some boxing. That's been on his Instagram for like months. Back in Houston, I hope my internet survives. It appears that my internet is trying to destroy me. He's doing some boxing in Houston. He's really focused on conditioning, defense, running, rebounding, the classics. But like, if he actually nails that stuff, and that's right after the front office was like, we want him to be really good at two things. Like get great at two things and spread your game out from there. If he actually nails those things, that's exactly the kind of player they need. So I think he, at least the way that we saw him today, is in the right mental space. Mathurin's the other guy in a similar spot, as you said, that's like, he understands what this season's about. He said he worked on the stuff that he knows he needs to get better at. I wish we got a little more into what that was, but it's going to be I think he understands that it's going to be different skills than his natural skills that he has to get better at to have an awesome season. I think that was my big takeaway from what he actually said. Yeah, I think besides those two, there's the obvious. We got the media day. This guy's added so many pounds. Isaiah Jackson. That's an incredible the fact that like he said he's at 240, but he also said he was like more than that and then lost some of it to get to what he considers his ideal playing weight. What you like you said he was listed at 215 last year, and on the roster that they gave us, he's listed at 220. So like that's a huge jump. Like you can see it, like his arms are huge. Like he's a much bigger, more muscular human now than he was before the injury. But yeah, that's just something that like will be interesting to see, like how his body handles
that new weight and those new muscles. And he could obviously use some more strength in terms of like dealing with guys inside and on the post. But then like how much of that does that affect his kind of springiness and the thing that kind of makes him a special athlete? So it'll be very interesting to see what Ijax looks like at this new weight.
More unique to him than Wiseman or Haliburton is that, like, for his Achilles injury, he is the guy who relies the most on athleticism of those three. So if his change in either his size, again, he looks bigger. And that's why I clarified. I tweeted that he said 240, and then I looked at the sheet right next to me. I'm like, that says 220. I'm going to ask later. He did say 240. And he looks bigger. Like, he does look bigger. We saw him working with a heavier basketball in practices late last season, like in the finals. So I know he was like working on getting the upper body strength added. How that actually looks for him functionally between his athleticism changes and strength changes will be telling, because his athleticism made him who he was, but his lack of like frame also limited. Like, I've always made the joke, I would think it's better for Isaiah Jackson to guard DeMar DeRozan than Vucevic when they were playing the Bulls, right? And like, that was real because he did better oftentimes against those less shifty perimeter guys than centers. So I'll be interested to see what this looks like for him and how that goes. But he was certainly the guy that I was like, oh, that's a lot of bodily shifts. Have we hit everybody that talked? Oh, we didn't talk about Andrew Nembhard. He is, in fact, the Pacers starting point guard this season.
We talked about him a little bit. But yeah, probably not enough considering like that's probably the guy that's role is changing the most. Why would you say that? I think that's probably true out of everybody. Yep. So yeah, I'm just excited to see it with Drew. Like the big thing with him, I think is like he's gotten some opportunities in the past to like be the backup point guard. Like multiple times in the past, they've tried to kind of take TJ out of the rotation and be like, let's see if Drew can do this and be like the other backup ball handler. And it just hasn't happened. Hasn't looked as good as maybe they were hoping. But he's gotten a lot more experience since then. And like, I feel like he's kind of maybe coming out of his shell a little bit more recently with like doing more things online, doing some different podcasts like on his own. Like before, I'd only seen him do pods with a teammate, and like he would kind of barely chime in occasionally. And like Ty talked about, like I'm sure a lot of people are hearing his voice for the first time. Yeah, so like Drew's probably like the most intriguing thing about this season.
I agree. And if he's like good at the one or is really something new or different, that of course impacts what his positions will be in the future. But those are still important skills to have if he's playing the two next to Tyrese Haliburton, right? So whatever kind of track of development this looks like for him, it still matters. I'll be very intrigued by what that looks like. But yeah, he said a lot of the right things, and I think the leadership and the voice part is just as meaningful. And that I asked him about that. And I think other notey stuff. One, James Wiseman. He's fully healthy. Good news for the Pacers. Their third center, other Achilles guy, good to go. Two, Rick Carlisle called Delon Wright. Very dramatic here, I know. A, quote, good player, unquote. Okay, they have a good player as their third string point guard for the coming season. Everything else, I don't know if it was necessarily newsworthy enough to talk about. I'll say this, though. I mentioned this earlier when it came to Wiseman and Jarris. Guys got the classic question of who looks good, who's popping and stuff. Last year, Tyrese Haliburton said, Ben Shepherd is balling. This year, a consensus most popular answer goes to the Aussie Young and Johnny Furphy. The Furfinator is balling, Derek.
Mighty Furfin Power Pacer. Here we go.
He didn't say anything super noteworthy to me. Did he say anything noteworthy to you besides just yep, I'm ready for year two?
Yeah, like I love asking people about rookie duties just because it always seems to get at least somewhat of a funny response. Or like
Isaiah was funnier than Johnny.
Right. Yeah. So especially with Isaiah being at the podium with him, I wanted to make sure to ask him about that. I didn't realize, because when I asked Jarris about this last year too, and he did not say, like, I still have to do this stuff until the first game of the regular season. So that was a little surprising to me that Johnny still has to do all this, all of his rookie duty things until he's officially a year two player at the start of the regular season, I guess. But I enjoyed that. Yeah, nothing crazy from Furphy. I think that probably the biggest thing, like quote wise, that anybody said was probably Carlisle just like openly saying, I love Johnny Furphy. Like that was probably the biggest thing. Just loves how he plays, how hard he goes all the time. Yeah, so he has an affinity for Furphy, and if there's a way to get him in the game, like he's probably on the outside of the rotation now, but you wouldn't think it's going to take much of an injury type of situation for him to find some minutes.
Yeah, same, like I've said a couple times this summer, same situation that Jarris was in last year, right? Where I think there's several players, I would say both fours, both threes, maybe both twos, where if they're hurt and out, Johnny Furphy is the guy getting minutes now. And that's 6 of their 10 rotation guys. And it's harder now. Depends who makes the team and stuff like that. You could make the case that if certain point guards get hurt, he also could find a way onto the floor, depending on how they divvy up the replacement minutes. Or a center gets hurt, they move topping up or something. So there's just lots of ways for him to play in a way that was not the case last year, where last year there were like 2 games he played because he was playing better than everybody else. And then the rest of his appearances were like, yep, we're too hurt or the game is over. And I think this year that will be definitely not the case. Do I think he's going to get like actual chosen over someone else minutes very often? No, I don't. But if they really think he looks this good, and he certainly like, I don't know how this became. This was the weird thing that happened this summer. Johnny Furphy in like July 6th was like, yeah, I gained 20 pounds of muscle, and we all reported it. And then he went to summer league and was really good. And then like 2 months later, it resurfaced somehow. Like the picture of him on the beach came out in Charleston, and people were like, oh, Johnny Furphy gained muscle this summer. We're like, yeah, we know. We saw him play. We were there. We saw the game. But it became an exciting thing. And you can see it on him. It was actually funny. The 2 guys, it was most obvious they looked different, sat next to each other in Isaiah and Furphy. So looking forward to seeing him, certainly. I think his shifts will be different. But I still don't at this time, despite Carlisle's affinity, expect Johnny Furphy to be a heavy minutes guy at any point early in the season.
Yeah, it'll take some time, either an injury or some frustrations with other people in the lineup before we see more of the Furph.
We did not talk to Ben Shepherd, and then anybody below, I would say, Ben Shepherd in the pecking order of the Pacers team. We will have to get at practice this week, particularly James Wiseman as he recovers. And, of course, the rookies and things of that sorts. I have nothing else from Media Day, Derek. I don't think my internet wants me to have anything else. Do you have anything else?
Nothing major. There was a lot of like positivity about James Wiseman, which I feel like was the case last year too. Like the Pacers organization clearly believes in James Wiseman. Lots of the players think he's very good. I look forward to him proving me wrong because I still am skeptical. So I'm looking forward to seeing James Wiseman. I thought one of the interesting things we haven't mentioned was he was like one of the last people to tap out during their conditioning test, which feels surprising for a guy coming off an Achilles injury. So
agreed.
Like, I don't feel like he was the most like well-conditioned guy last year even. So like that's a good sign for James Wiseman.
You're forgetting that we saw a ghost, and it was James Wiseman wearing jersey number 11. What? I forgot about that. Very dramatic switch that happened this offseason. Tony Bradley, Mr. Steal Your Number, came and took it. We'll see what training camp is like. We'll see how practices go. They start on Tuesday. We'll be there talking about it, but that is Media Day for the Pacers of 2025-26. A fun day, a lot learned, even though it was much more subtle than past seasons. Their goals are much different than past seasons. Derek, where can people find the things you'll be saying about the Pacers and about Media Day?
Yeah, trying to get the subscribers up on YouTube. Got some tentative plans to bring some different type of content that we don't have in the Pacers space there. So it's just at iPacers on YouTube. Follow me on Blue Sky at iPacers, Twitter at iPacersblog. Appreciate you for having me on here, Tony. Always a pleasure.
It is always a pleasure for me as well. Media Day is always a hoot. Pascal Siakam took a picture of us. So if you want to see how great we looked in the front row of the Media Day arrangement, I'm sure it will end up on his Instagram at some point. This week, we'll talk about what the Eastern Conference standings could look like this year with Shane Young and the usual offseason tradition. We'll talk about what we learn in the early days of training camp for the Pacers and so much more as they shift from off-season mode to season mode. They play a game a week from the day this episode comes out. Thank you all so much for listening. You can find me on social media at Tony R. East and, of course, Derek at iPacers or iPacersblog. Back tomorrow talking more Pacers. Till then, everybody, have a wonderful day.